All right, good afternoon once again. We are about to start. And as it's typical, we will have an opening prayer, and I call on Miss Gloria Copeland to give us that opening prayer to guide us through this evening's deliberations.
Prayer which is said by our Federation of Women's Institutes. Keep us, O Lord, from pettiness. Let us be large in thought, word, and deed. Let us be done with fault-finding and leave off self-seeking. May we put away all pretense and meet each other face to face, without self-pity and without prejudice. May we never be hasty in judgment and always generous. Teach us to put into practice our better impulses, straightforward and unafraid. Let us take time for all things. Make us grow calm, serene, and gentle. Grant that we may realize that it is the little things that create differences. But in the big things of life, we are one. And may we strive to touch and know the great human heart common to us all. And, O Lord, let us not forget to be kind. Thank you.
Standing, we are going to have to sing the national anthem without music, I believe. No, with music. First, I'd like to let you know who I am. The name is Louis Frederick, and at this point in time, I'm just one of those people within the campaign team trying to make it all happen. Now, this consultation this afternoon, it's a visioning consultation, and it's meant to I would like to greet or announce the arrival of the next Member of Parliament for San Fernando West. All right. He's a little bit late, but he's here. All right. This consultation this afternoon is meant to talk or have a discussion with groups out of the San Fernando and environs area. The catchment area that we were looking at would have been San Fernando East and San Fernando West, and also Pointe-à-Pierre. However, we are limited today to only the candidate who has been selected for San Fernando West, who in a little while will share his vision for San Fernando West and its environs, I should say for San Fernando, all right? And we will really like to get from the representatives of the groups gathered here, get their views with regards to how they would like to see San Fernando and its environs develop. You know, what are some of your goals and your objectives? What are some of the concerns that you all have? Now, we are going to be on a little bit of a tight schedule, so I want to immediately call on the the deputy mayor, is it? All right, for San Fernando, who will give some greetings.
Very brief, because this evening really is about the candidate and your views. But let me take the opportunity first to invite each and every one of you to a very important event that we're having tomorrow. It's a lecture by David Mohammed on emancipation. And the topic for tomorrow's lecture would be reparation and its impact on the 21st century. As you know, reparation is a very proverbial topic now as we speak, because I think it will be on the agenda for the Prime Minister for the State Conference in the CARICOM this weekend, and also it's been addressed by United Nations, and Haiti is already ready to make a contribution, sorry, France to Haiti, and it's critical that we create an awareness and an understanding of what reparation is about at this time. So I'm asking you to allow young people who may be available, especially those who are doing Caribbean studies, to come to this lecture tomorrow morning. It starts at 9 o'clock and it's right here, and refreshments will be provided. This evening's presentation really is about the NGOs and those of you with an interest in the development of San Fernando to put forward your thoughts as we gather and put together a document and a strategy for us to move forward. We have been talking about this San Fernando waterfront project for a while now. We understand that we will be going into government very soon, and we should be repositioning ourselves. We have had, Faris was selected since, I think it was November the 6th, I think it was, and I would expect that between November the 6th and now, we'd have started preparing ourselves for the transformation and be ready, because as we move forward, he cannot do it alone. We are critical to the success of this candidate. We are critical to the development of San Fernando. I am, as chairman of the constituency, I am already working with the executive as we work together collectively to put San Fernando where it's supposed to be. We have been, I don't want to say treated badly, but have been left behind. For the past 5 years, we have had no face, no voice, nothing, whereas rural Trinidad and Tobago have been developing. It's an embarrassment to go to DB right now. You feel as if you were in the second capital of Trinidad and Tobago right now. So we should take this opportunity to start developing San Fernando. And I'm looking around here at the group I'm seeing a lot of intelligent people who can make a contribution. So with no further delay, let me thank you all for being here this afternoon as San Fernandians and as people who are critical to the development of San Fernando as we shape and present San Fernando for the future. I thank you.
Thank you, Junior. And to quickly move on and to hear his vision and to give the feature address this afternoon, I'm going to ask on the former Senator Faris Alwari to come to the podium.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Honorable Deputy Mayor, Chairman of the San Fernando West Constituency, Councillor Laverne Smith, and my own Debbie Khalees sitting on the far left. Ladies and gentlemen, all representatives of the many societies here this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I just listened to the 3 o'clock news, the 4 o'clock news, the 5 o'clock news, and the 6 o'clock news on my way to this meeting. That's the fate of anybody that works anywhere else outside of San Fernando. That's the fate of hundreds of thousands of our citizens. What gripped me was that it was raining. It gripped me that all of the first 3 hours in traffic was spent waiting for people to enter Chaguanas. The next hour of traffic was spent waiting for people to pass San Fernando. Getting onto the bypass and coming to San Fernando was a painless exercise. How many of you remember when San Fernando was the other end, and other entity in Trinidad and Tobago other than Port of Spain? What took me to Port of Spain today? We had a feature address to the JCC. Dr. Rowley was engaged in an open conversation with the movers and shakers, the intellectual dynamos of our society. He spoke for a short while, he opened the floor and he allowed the flow of questions to come at the PNM. We are now in San Fernando West, well into our campaign. We started by screening on November 6th. The election will be held on September 7th. That is several months of campaigning. But San Fernando is being invited to realize that when it rains, everything in Trinidad stops. San Fernando is being invited to understand that traffic does not wish to come to San Fernando unless we live here. The flow of traffic northward or central or south of San Fernando is now where our city sees its pull. However, 3 of our city's schools, TML, Boys Government School, and my alma mater, Grant Memorial School, will probably tomorrow have first, second, and third place in the SEA exam again. San Fernando still produces some of the very brightest and most capable people. San Fernando still has some of the most beautiful places to live. San Fernando still has some of the most patient and kind people living amongst its citizenry. San Fernando has, however, not received its fair share of the pie. San Fernando and the NGOs present this afternoon will be able to testify that we as a city have not seen our institutions improve. We've not seen any improvement in our hospital because the reform, the transformation of the Chancery Lane complex into a teaching hospital meant that we took the understaffed number of hospital workers in the San Fernando General Hospital and divided it into 2. You still don't have the medical attention, you still don't have the facilities, and the San Fernando General Trauma Treatment Center aspect is still underserviced. We've not seen our police force increased. We've not seen our local government, city corporation provided with more resources and more funding. We still have only 25 police officers working in the municipal police. This afternoon with us is the St. Vincent de Paul Society. This afternoon with us is the VIP entity. This afternoon with us are a number of social working entities. And the question for all of us as entities is, have I received my fair share of nearly $400 billion? Can San Fernando see and feel and touch and enjoy the benefit of nearly $400 billion? Do we see it along beautiful city pavements? Do we see it in the homeless living condition right outside the courthouse? As you come up Harris Street and you pass the courthouse, people are gathering to bed down for the night right now. Do we see it in Green Acres? Do we see our residents looking towards the river and the canals and wondering if it's going to overflow? Do we feel it in the well-groomed vacant lots where we're confident there are no more any mosquitoes or dengue waiting to attack? Short answer to all of these rhetorical questions is no. We don't see our fair share of the pie. And if you'll permit me a short opportunity, I intend to say what the PNM intends to do about that. Because it's all well and good to complain, but what do we have to offer is the question. What are we saying we are capable of doing? Tonight we will have a public meeting in Coquier, just off the roundabout, and we'll be spending a lot of time talking about some aspects of what we'll be doing. In particular, I intend to talk about national security. So I won't be speaking too much about that now, but what I will speak to now is what can the PNM do different to make people's lives more meaningful. And what we have on offer, ladies and gentlemen, is firstly a team of thinking people. We have a coordinated, well-oiled machinery that is presently populated by people willing to serve as officers of the PNM for the time being. That means we don't all not realize that this is for a time being. You give of yourself for now. Your time to stop serving in frontline capacity will come all too soon. We have a political leader that is very serious about seeing a transformational change. And the policy that we prescribe for transformational change to make a difference in the lives of people in San Fernando, importantly, starts with right where we are. That is the city corporation. We intend in our local government reform to make sure that places like the St. Vincent de Paul Society, places like any other NGO that supports the less fortunate or works to better the lives of citizens, that they receive the government revenue administered through people who are capable of delivering the service. The San Fernando City Corporation will have to have councillors who are assisted by social workers, who are assisted by professionals who work in administration in the city corporation, who are assisted by employees put to work through the corporation. Not just employees for day jobs, not just casual workers, but educators, but nursing staff, but crews who are capable of performing continuous repair work. Our drains, our roads, our schools, our hospitals, by having pre-approved lists of businesses that can be used for transparent sourcing of materials and goods, by having an audit department that can audit these things and make sure that there is value for money, that we are not wasting expenditure. That the St. Vincent de Paul Society, just as an example, those of you who I saw on Mother's Day and watched the work that you put out for the elderly ladies in our societies, that you're able to have an immediate on-call assistance from the social workers in the corporation, from those attached to the hospitals, from those attached to the clinics and community centers, so that our aged people are not left in a chair to pass the last remaining days of their lives, but that they can go out and socialize in society, that they can be active members and valuable citizens for themselves first and foremost, and their families secondly. It is only in this system that we would be able to track the delivery of social services to the most needy. And the most needy includes the people that need to be trained. The people who are in need of employment but don't have the capacity to do jobs that they want to do, they need to be trained. These people amongst us, our own brothers and sisters, also include the underemployed. For the young people sitting in the auditorium, how many of you are pursuing tertiary education or advanced diplomas or courses, course after course after course, but where are you working and for how much? Are you, like our other brothers and sisters, the working poor? Are you in the same level and spectrum as our old age pensioners who have pensions that can't buy what they need month to month? Is our society really receiving a fair distribution of resources? You see, the PNM recognizes that unless we change the system, this election will be unlike, well, will be like every other. It will be smiling politicians with armies behind them, coming to promise you the sun, the moon, and the stars, and 5 years later having to face you again, or not being able to face you again as we have right now, and telling you they couldn't do it. What we have spent our time in opposition doing is to recognize that the system is not working. $45 billion has passed through local government. Does San Fernando see $45 billion at work here? The answer is no. So what do? Do we continue to do the same thing in the same way every time and expect that people are going to get service delivery? Or are we going to see what we see when we walk our communities? Are we going to see the population of Hatter's Panyard grow in a squatting community from 47 people to 650 people? Are we going to see our settling community along Bayshore, if you head southerly along the coastline, are you going to see that population expand and continue to expand without electricity, without water? Are we going to see our waterfront, our majestic King's Wharf, look more like something that is the opposite of a King's Wharf? Where is our business enterprise in San Fernando? Where are our gas stations, our entertainment centers, and where is our security? How do we feel as a people is the question. What we offer on the table right now is a fundamental shift in how we deliver services. It is to allow a representative to work together with councillors, social workers, and the organs of representation in local government, in the hospital, in the police service, in education, and to make sure that there is value for money in the services delivered, but to make sure that there is fairness in the delivery, equity in the delivery. Those of you familiar faces who have been at every cottage meeting will have heard me say a lot of this before. But it's worth repeating to those of you who have never heard it, because it is a fundamental shift in who we are and where we are. And what we can promise you in the PNM is that we intend to have a small cabinet. In having a small cabinet, we intend to have members of parliament required to be in their constituencies, even if you're a cabinet member. But a cabinet member or a member of parliament can only do so much by way of policy. How you deliver the services is the key. And our restructuring of those services is the key difference between this election, this promise, and any other election that has gone before us. But ladies and gentlemen, I only came to do a little talking, and more particularly to do more answering than talking. What I wish to do, having made a few heads of discussion apparent, is to open the microphone to hear from us, the NGOs, as to what concerns us, where we need to be in the next 5 years, and what you want to see of the PNM and of your representatives to take us there. So permit me if I stop the delivery from my perspective now and open the microphone in a very informal way. The microphone is now open. Please come forward and let us have a conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Senator Awari, for allowing us the opportunity to speak with you today. I have a litany of questions for you, but I understand you're strapped for time. But my concern as somebody who writes policy is, what is the type of framework that the PNM is using to develop policy? What examples are you all leading from to develop the policies for San Fernando West to move us forward? Is it based off of like American models, United Kingdom models, or is it Scandinavian models?
Sure, thank you. The structure that we use to come up with policy is firstly consultation. Secondly, it involves analyzing what policy prescriptions we had before and which we purchased before, part of which we implemented already, updating those policies through a consultative process, and then retooling it to see what is needed now. It is not strictly ever in our type of environment a pure wholesale importation from the United States or England or Scandinavia. It is more like borrowing pages from books, and I'll give you an example. When we are talking implementing the town and country planning laws, the city corporation is immediately responsible for making sure that people build within the laws. Yet, we see time and again in Trinidad and Tobago that people put down developments and then the neighborhood, the communities protest, burn tires. That, if you look to the Florida model, does not happen because the city has to have a meeting with the communities and it has to be signed off by the communities where the projects go. That's part of some of our work and our consultation. Another part of it involves how we disaggregate short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And let me give you an example of that. We will be building a San Fernando waterfront. Can we do it all in one shot? No. What we can do is to put together the tools to get us there on a phased basis and share that vision so people have what you call a line of sight. We are here now, we are seeing where we are headed to, and we have that line of sight and understand the steps to get there. That involves squatter relocation on a consultation basis. People must agree to go there. That involves redesigning the fisheries and wharfing sections in consultation with the users. That involves traffic analysis plans and circulatory plans together with the PTSC and the taxi drivers and the commuters. That involves the business sector agreeing which sections it is going to invest in on public-private arrangements. That involves landowners agreeing to pool assets in with the city. All of those require short-term carve-out, medium-term carve-out, and long-term carve-out. What we can tell you is we spent a lot of time on Vision 2020, which was not a PNM policy created only by PNM people, but created by captains of industry, the very best of the best. Some of them are actually in government right now. It would be irresponsible of us to take all of that good work and just throw it away because the UNC laughed at it. It required retooling and consideration of what worked and what did not work.
Another question that I have is, you made mention that you want to involve more volunteers through NGOs, the public, and schools as well. What kind of incentives would you be putting forward to schools, the public, and NGOs? Because the time that we live in now, people very rarely give of themselves freely without expecting anything in return. Not that that is a right way of thinking, but it is the reality that we live within today. My thoughts on bringing in students into the volunteer program would be, the incentive would be for more towards like Form 6 and Form 5 students, that their experience in volunteering, whether it is in engineering, social work, legal framework, would count towards credits at university level. This would engage more students to actively participate in a volunteer because they're giving up their time, but they're getting something fairly tangible in return. But that's for students, and that would be my line of thinking. But how would you engage your corporate entities to participate in volunteering?
Fantastic question. Fantastic question. Let's start with where you started. I too think similarly to you. I too believe volunteerism takes us only so far. Volunteerism must be on a quid pro quo basis, a this for that, a reciprocal arrangement. The first thing is to encourage the fact that we must have pride in ourselves. Volunteerism works pretty well. Let me give you a golden example of an excellent volunteer entity that has been able to survive and grow and build for 60 years. You may have heard of it. It's called the People's National Movement. It is an entity that has been around for 60 years, but it is built on the shoulders of volunteers. That is a powerful, powerful example of how you can continue to be relevant through volunteerism. And if you ask any of the many volunteers here, and there's so many of them at different levels, they will tell you, like I can testify now, that your most rewarding experience is knowing that you've made a difference. But let's get more real. If we were, through an analysis of our policy and through an analysis of our education system, as I believe we must now analyze, put into effect community hours into the schools as a mandatory requirement for graduation. Let's call it 40 hours a term, or semester some people may have. 20 hours a term. That's 60 hours a year. I've said this, I've used this example before. There are 17,000 SEA students every year. If you take from SEA just up to Form 5 alone, call it 20,000 easy for multiplication. That's 5 twos are 10, 100,000 students on tap for 60 hours of community service. That's 600,000 community hours a year. Add 100,000 parents involved in their children's lives, you get now 200,000 or 120,000 community service hours a year. Picture that in your communities. Picture that in your St. Vincent de Paul. Picture that in your VIP. Picture that along our main thoroughfares. And understand the power that that can bring. So I very much think that that's a no-brainer. Has it been done elsewhere? Yes. It is a solid part of the North American system. But it's a solid part of any system that wants to encourage people to buy into the patrimony of their country, to have a little national pride. Every time you watch an American movie and you see them singing their national anthem, you see everybody, and the whole world knows the beginning, oh say can you see. We want to be like that in Trinidad. We want to make sure that when our national anthem is played, that people have a swell of pride. And that can only come if you buy into your community. What we intend to do, certainly what I will be advocating for in San Fernando, together with Neil Mohammed in Pointe-a-Pierre, Terry Jadunanan in Oropuch, Randall Mitchell in San Fernando East, because we are one pack, not by mistake. We are here to represent all of our communities together. What we intend to do is to certainly energize our communities, community by community, street by street, with our local government representatives, with our NGOs, and to come out and serve our communities. What's so hard with agreeing that we will paint every wall along a road once a month? What's so hard with getting corporate sponsors to give us the whitewash or to give us the paint and we'll provide the labor? What's so difficult about that? Along Independence Avenue, the curbs and sidewalks, along adopting a tree. These are easy wins, and something that is very close to my heart in San Fernando is that we need to beautify our city. We are not where we ought to be in terms of beautification, but this hasn't been something not done before. It's been done in Detroit, some of the worst crime-ridden centers. It's been done in Miami. You actually know what caused the revolution of Miami? Miami Vice. The imagery created in Miami Vice and the painting of sets caused the mayor of Miami to agree to plant palm trees right through the city of Miami and to paint every single development in coral colors. And when you drive it through today, you see a vision at work. So the PNM intends to hatch a vision and to ask for participation. And the quid pro quo is not only community satisfaction and desire and belief, but it can be attenuated because when we see our tax-paying dollars at work for us, the budget, I am sure, can afford for certain concessions on a charitable donation basis to work. We have them right now in our laws of Trinidad and Tobago, but they are underutilized because they're not properly promoted. So we intend to promote that.
No, that's actually a really good point that I wanted to bring up again, which is promotion. If you look around, we have a decent turnout, but it could have been better. Living in North America myself, I know the city of Toronto has a very well laid out website that lets you know what are the services in the city, what is going on in the city, and even positions that open up in the city. San Fernando West, I think they had a website at one point in time. I know that most government offices now rely on Facebook, which is not really ideal. Would there be a possibility for the future for San Fernando to become more active in advertising what is going on and its services on our website?
The answer is yes. If you look at what we've done, and I don't want to say San Fernando West alone, I'm in San Fernando City Hall. I'm talking San Fernando and its environs. And what I can tell you is that we intend, listen, I don't intend 5 years from now to have to face an electorate and be run out of town with a big stick. It requires energizing communities and having the backbone to serve them and having the backbone to stand up and represent continuously for 5 years. You cannot be a representative and not continue to be in your community. So yes, the short answer is yes, and we are very determined to do it. Okay.
Okay, and I have just one last question because I don't want to take up the mic for too long.
Before you go, we'd like to know the name, your name, and the organization that you've come from.
Oh.
And anybody coming afterwards, please do that.
Okay, my name is John Kisson, and I represent an NGO called Fresh Air Promotions.
Thank you.
My final question is, what is your expectations for the ability to finance projects in San Fernando in the face of the global economy? We know that there are things that are fairly out of our, well, very much out of our control, depressing the prices of oil. So it is fair to assume well into the future that there may be a serious downturn and we all may have to take a very bitter pill to swallow. What is your expectations of financing projects into the future?
Well, you seem to have all the golden questions. This is exactly what we need to be thinking about. We've just spent 5 years spending $400 billion. That's 15 years of government expenditure. From 2010, go back and add $50 billion extra. That's what that's equal to. In other words, the government just spent 15 plus years of money in Trinidad and Tobago in 5 years. The most interesting thing about that is that we have no revenue generating entities to show for it. None. There's no Point Lisas industrial estate. There's no mega energy project. There's no distribution center. There is no revenue created from that expenditure. So, what does Trinidad do? Trinidad cannot afford to spend without regard to making sure we have an ability to earn money. Oil and gas will run out, but faster than oil and gas running out is the fact that the revenue that we get from oil and gas is going to go down, and that's a matter of fact because the royalty take that we enjoy in our gas pricing arrangements is coming up for renegotiation 2016, 2017 and 2018, and if you get 40 cents on the dollar right now, when the price of oil dropped from $100, you're getting 40% of $50 right now. You're soon to get 10 to 15% of $50. That's how far a revenue fall you can expect. But that doesn't frighten us. We will obviously have to prioritize our expenditure without causing a shock to Trinidad and Tobago. We will obviously have to engage in prudent fiscal management, which may include a continuation of deficit financing and investment into rail projects. That's why we commit to investing into a rapid rail system. Why? I just spent 4 hours getting here. Where is my productivity for the day? How do I feed my family knowing I spent 4 hours on the highway to get here? Wouldn't it be by far a better investment of time for me to have gotten on a water taxi or a train and take 20 minutes to come to San Fernando, pay money to a taxi driver to take me here, and move anywhere else I wanted to? He earns money, I save time, I earn money, I feed my family, and money circulates in the society. But that project, the Rapid Rail project, equals to a good investment even if you have to borrow for it. And you're borrowing not for now, you're borrowing for 20, 30 years ahead, because that's 30 years of productivity. But when you do that, you can then invite your country to slowly, without shock, remove some of the subsidies which the international lending agencies tell us we have to remove. Because you cannot tell people, I'm removing the subsidy on gas just so. What's the alternative? If you remove the subsidy on gas, you may encourage people to use less cars because it comes slightly more expensive, but they must have an affordable and efficient and reliable way to get to work. It cannot be a pound and a crown to get some. It can't be $50 one way inside of San Fernando at Christmas time for a short drop. It can't be that. So we intend to borrow as may be necessary to make sure that we invest in revenue generating projects so that future generations have the ability to enjoy the patrimony. And it is through investment in these kinds of entities that we can truly talk about diversification. Let me give you this as a wrap up now. Oil and gas, yes, is our main revenue generator, close to 55% when you add the ancillary aspects. But the insurance industry is 27% of our GDP, and the manufacturing sector and construction included in there is the rest of it. Think about it. We speak English, we're close to North America, we have the ability to also be close to South America, we have safe harbor, we have good logistics for port management. What is there to stop us from diversifying? To have our people involved in the financial services sector, to have our people involved in ship repair or ship supply, etc., for goods and services, to have cruise ships come down and enjoy a carnival village. We own Carnival. Is it impossible to have a year-round village, a carnival center for cruise ships to enter into, to have mass recreated every single day of the year in different ways? Old mass tents, food, cafe, ship repair. These are where we have to start thinking. That's where we need to start going, and we intend to invest in the diversification of our communities, which is why San Fernando is going to have a waterfront redevelopment delivered to it under a PNM government next beginning on September 7th, 2015.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Former Commissioner of Police, Mr. Filbert, in our presence. He is a gentleman that must be extremely concerned about what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago today, because the confidence levels as to where we are in our management of crime and security is at an all-time low. As I see my colleague, ex-prisons officer, ex-wonderful classmate of mine, now powerful attorney, Mr. Jack, in our presence as well. Forgive me. It is the nickname that we used to call him while we were at school that he's not quite aware of. No, but ladies and gentlemen, seriously, in our front row are two gentlemen that have spent a very, very long time in service for Trinidad and Tobago, both in the police service and also as well in the prison service. And these are two institutions that are currently the focus of great attention. But how many of you remember 5 years ago the plan that the UNC had for delivery of services? In 100 days, crime would have been repelled. The battle was on land. It was not at sea. You had to have the ovarian fortitude to call a state of emergency. I think that that conversation is still as relevant today as it was then. That was not a shotgun. That was the microphone. Is there anyone else in the audience with a question?
Good evening. Good evening. Gerard David, community activist, Green Acres, Coconut Drive area. Now, I just would like to know what are the plans for implementing technological solutions in terms of data-driven economy and community activities, facilitate community activities and whatever institutional projects that we have. For instance, let's start with the schools. We have all these laptops that Kamala is giving out with our hamper politics, all right? How are we going to rein the computer back into the classroom, all right, in an effective way, using multimedia and reducing costs? Okay, for instance, instead of having desktop computers, you might look into thin clients. So you have a keyboard and a monitor at the desktops without a computer, and it's feeding in from a server room. So basically you have one computer, a server, running all the interfaces to the students. Okay, that would be a great cost reduction for the schools. I also, by the way, speaking of schools, I like your idea from the volunteering, student volunteerism. We also need to tie that back into the syllabus so that in the process of the cognitive learning of the students in their engagement with the communities, they will be able to contribute to their projects and the fields of studies by writing reports and so forth on their cognitive learning that they have acquired. All right, so it ties directly back into the syllabus. Hospitals, right? How do we get a more responsive system for the hospital, technological system, where we live in an age of big data, all right? How do we get to have a more data-driven hospital system that will facilitate continuous improvement, process improvement in a responsive manner, right? For instance, my father died at San Fernando General Hospital for lack of responsiveness and for want of simply antibiotics, all right? Because it was not detected in the emergency room when it should have, for something as simple as maybe they should have had a checklist, a simple checklist that would say, okay, did we have our blood work? Did we have our urine test? Did we so and so? And with the urine test, they would have detected that he had an infection. But this was not done. And 3 days later, he died in the hospital. 2 days later, actually. All right? How do we ensure a more sophisticated system to detect all these issues? Okay, and this doesn't only mean, while you could have a data-driven system for the hospitalization, you also have, as I just mentioned, simple measures like a checklist from, sophisticated, yes, from sophisticated statistics all the way to a simple checklist.
Gerard, if I could say,
yes.
How do you do is the beginning of each one of those statements. And the first thing, the most immediate, real ability to do this is to change the government first of all.
Right.
The second thing, and I mean that sincerely, because after that amount of expenditure, we have not seen an improvement. It was ludicrous to put laptops into the system when you couldn't charge them, when you couldn't make sure that you were pulsing out work to be done on the computers, when you couldn't require the students to hand in their assignments via the computers, when you didn't put typing in as a core curriculum course. It is madness. to think in the working world, working without a computer. So why wait until you leave the school environment to then learn those things? To then take a Microsoft Word course or Microsoft Office course or an AutoCAD course, etc. It should have been implemented into an improvement in the curriculum. And that's something that we are obviously looking at on the telemedication side of it and the information sharing and management. That's something that we're very committed to on the healthcare side of it, because it has serious benefits. It allows you to buy less, more efficiently, control your storage of goods and services in medication, equipment, etc., and to share information as you walk into the door of the Port of Spain General Hospital, but you live in San Fernando. There's no reason why that database couldn't be instantaneously shared in the emergency room, just by way of pulling out your ID card, which has a scan code on it, and you get it. I have O negative blood. I am an universal donor, but singular acceptor. I, like my mother, have been called many a time in emergency situations to literally pump blood out of one arm into somebody else. But if I get blood from anybody else, I'm dead. That's it, full stop. Unless it's O negative, and it's very rare to have. But how would someone know that? Unless at least that information was known. So the point is, a lot of what you're seeing is part of the writing. But you know, it seems as if this is an impossible thing to do. Let's put it this way. We have enough money to do it because we spend the same amount in healthcare as Dubai does. We spend more in education than Panama does. We have 1.5 million people, they have 3.5 million people. Our budget is larger than Panama's, pound for pound. They have the Panama Canal. So what is wrong is the targeting, and the leakage is a fancy word for corruption. There's too much leakage in the system, and this is not really a producing country. It is a redistribution country. We import everything and mark it up. Look in our groceries. I went to buy a bottle of Nescafe Gold the other day, and just for joke, I called the supermarket owner. I said, boss, how much is this thing selling for? He said $89. I said, okay. I said, how much markup you have? And boy, we don't mark up nothing, this and that. Is Nestle sell us the thing? I said, Nestle, who is the same international Nestle all around the world? Yes. I said, okay. Everybody with a smartphone, any phone, pull it up, you Google Nescafe Gold cost, you choose a location. I chose somewhere in Miami. It was $2.99 US for the same size. If you add $6.30 for 1 US to 1 TT, if you add $1.15 for VAT, if you add $1.20 for customs, if for the duties, and if you add for carriage, freight, and insurance, you get 10 to 1. That's the conversion factor. So if I bought it retail for $2.89 in Miami, it should have cost $28.90 to be on the shelf in Trinidad. Yet Nestle USA selling it for, let's call it $30, Trinidad selling it for $90. Where did that other $60 come from? Think about it. The same international company, Nestle, which manufactures and has a big sprawling estate in Trinidad, has a $90 versus $30 disparity, $60. But is it Nestle? Or is it the supermarket? Or is it the distributor? We have to find out where the problem is so that there is a value for a dollar. Every time I travel to the United Kingdom or to the United States, how many of you dig into your pockets, have coins in your pockets? How many of you have some 1-cent coins in your pockets or your handbag or purse? How many of you have 25-cent pieces? How many of you, when you go to the grocery or you go to the pharmacy and you get a 3 cents in change, put it in the cash pan? Sometimes you might get a whole 75 cents and you put it in the cash pan. Why? What can 75 cents buy in Trinidad? But I never cease to feel a sense of joy and excitement when I go to the United States and they tell me, that'll be 19 cents, sir. And I'm like, what? 19 cents? That'll be 11 cents, sir. I'm like, what? 11 cents? Can you imagine a place where $1.01 still makes a difference? Well, Trinidad needs to rein in its inflation rate. And how we do that is by becoming a producing country. We have enough arable land to produce. What we need to do is to be able to package and distribute as well. We have enough fish, but for heaven's sake, you can't sell the fish in the hot sun 6 o'clock in the evening on the wharf. It must be in refrigerated bins. It must be properly cleaned, etc. So what we have to do is to put in place those mechanisms to make sure that there is value for $1 and look to keep the prices realistic. And it's not by way of a price control. You can't go and slap people for selling expensive. You have to create competition, legitimate competition, to keep the prices where they should be. And that's the trick to it all. We must create that enabling environment. I'm not sure what's happening with the mic. One moment. It's always a young man who's a techie.
Sir, how can we...
Sorry, what's your name and entity?
Gloria Coombs. How can we...
Are you representing anyone?
I'm representing the Lions Club of San Fernando.
Very important entity, Mrs. Coombs. How
can we make it easier to get young children admitted at school? Some parents register their children 3-4 different schools and still get trouble to get them into a school. I'd like to know, what can we do?
Well, that's another very important constituency issue. Does anybody here live at Olera Heights? Okay, Olera Heights. Beautiful development, lovely people. All the children who live at Olera Heights, when they go down to be registered at the school just before Olera Heights, tell me that they are told, these fellas want to name the school. Tell them I'm a little smarter than that now. I don't want to put pressure on people. These people, when they go down to register their children at birth, are told the PNM build house for you, let them build school for you. Literally. What does that mean? Do we have enough primary schools? Is just the access to primary schools upside down? Is the registration system upside down? We as a political party will only be able to deal with part of that situation because Trinidad still has a competitive selection process for schools, and some parents want their children to go to schools where there is a greater number of applicants than spaces. So we won't be able to fix that problem, but what we can do is to certainly commit to making sure that the school ratio, the number of seats per child per birth rate averages looks right, and more importantly, to make sure that the curriculum and staff are equipped to deal with the issues. Those are the deliverables that we would be able to look after. And GATE has produced a whole lot of people ready to go into education, but do they have the spaces to go? I met a young lady who was flying for Air Caribbean. 3 university degrees, masters in child psychology, could not get a job with the education facilities company to do child psychology, could not get a job. Why on earth should that young lady be unemployed? So that's again the targeting. That's again the social survey that we must do in San Fernando to say, what resources do we have? How many welders? How many carpenters? How many teachers? How many master's graduates? How many doctors? How many nurses? How many people who need to be trained do we have, and where are they? Well, let's get busy dealing with that. And if you have the resources, you can allocate the resources. Because if you were to come into the city corporation and say, listen, I'm currently unemployed and looking for a job, and there was a central database saying jobs are available in the following fields, etc., and employers knew to access that database, or entities knew to access that database, you're solving 90% of the problem. And that's where the information technology comes in, as you raised so astutely a little while ago. And local government reform, obviously. So it all starts in the city corporation. This is where you can get a lot of relief if you have the resources to do it.
All right. Could we get another question?
Hi, good night. My name is Carl Mattis. I am the chairman.
Carl, you can grab the mic if you want. If it's Oh.
I'm the chairman of the Marbella Family Crisis Center. To some of you may not know the work that the Marbella Family Crisis Center tend to do there. But one of the issues that I wish to raise is that as an ex-welfare officer and as a lawyer going to court, one of the issues we see is that San Fernando doesn't have a mediation center. Even up to today, in the court, what you recognize is that there are a number of issues to attend, particularly in the Medina building, and you're going to be referred out of. So Marbella Family Crisis Center, we have the space, we have students who we have doing practicum, and therefore in this circumstance, I don't know if you would wish to look at the, first having the Marbella Family Crisis Center as one of your mediation centers. And at the same time, we also have practicum, people coming from UWI. So therefore it meant that we can have that kind of practicum session. Yeah. So we'd wish for you to look at that issue. The second thing is that the Marbella Family Crisis Center has what you call a homework center. And therefore it is that we are able to move some of the people from off the lines, keep them busy. And at the same time, we also tend to use sports in order to ease deviance. But one of the things it is we have, we should say, people who volunteer. But at the same time, some of these people need employment. So therefore, what you're actually seeing is that there's a high, vulnerable group of people in Trinidad there. But how do you, they're willing to work, but how do you get to finance them in order to meet their needs? The other thing what we need to look at while we're looking at vulnerability, during the year 1981 to 1982, you would have had the IMF coming into Trinidad. And what the IMF did, you would have seen that there have been an increase in what you call contract employment. As a result of that, although my son is a lawyer, my daughter is a doctor, my standard is way better today because I would have had a permanent job. I would have been able to go into the bank and get loans and that kind of scenario, housing and that kind of thing. Whereas that they are qualified people, but yet the mother and father had to go with them into the bank in order to get a car. So therefore, how do you look at those people who have less skills, in that scenario? So how do you look at it in terms of the quality of employment that you're going to offer?
Fantastic. Well, Carl, may I say that immediately, we're on the same conversation point. This needs analysis and social survey that we as a city, a wider city, needs to do includes identifying the people who are at risk and how they need to be trained or put to use. And what we intend to do is something that we're doing right now in San Fernando West. My campaign has involved so far, when people I ask, I say, listen, are you interested in supporting the campaign? They first think I mean money. Then they come to realize that what I'm asking them to do is to hire people who we recommend need a job. Because they are looking for people to work and to train, and there are people who are unemployed or underemployed. And that marriage of need and looking for opportunity, those two can happen in our local government restructuring. Of course, you know that I share the same dispute resolution background that you do. I did part of my master's was in alternative dispute resolution, and I'm a big advocate and fan of it. And the judiciary itself, as you know, has been pushing for this ADR, alternative dispute resolution aspects, as part of its development. That's something that we intend to promote. We wish to encourage institutions such as yours to continue doing the work that you're doing to get the social connection going. Because you're right, it is sports, it is positive activity, it is involvement in community that steps us away from crime. Those are the important aspects. So we're very much talking along the same lines.
But the other issue I wish to raise is that if you should meet children on the street and you should ask them what you want to be, most people in Form 5 can't say what they want to be.
Correct.
And therefore, one of the issues that, from my perspective, is that there needs to be a proper career guidance in terms of the school. When I look at the career guidance that they offer right now, is that you want to do medicine, 3 A levels. You want to do that, law is any, you know. And then when I look at my own personal experience, because that's what I use to guide my children, it is that you've got to look at this. First I told them is that, well, they had the capacity being Mattises. The other thing is that they were able to go along the line of what I would call jobs like medicine and law and that scenario, because these jobs you could employ yourself. The other issue is that other people, like the girl you talked a while ago, who went and did the psychology and that scenario, there are people who are doing things that when you finish, you're not going to be employable. And therefore, if you look at the whole world in moving in terms of career, you've got to have 3-4 jobs, and you've got to be retrained in order to be current,
yes,
in order to get that job. And therefore, what you recognize is that we don't have that kind of scenario. And therefore, it is that we need to have proper career guidance. Because, as I said earlier on, they will tell you 3 A levels to do medicine. But what the world beating people with now is what you call emotional intelligence. Do you have the necessary emotional intelligence to support the kind of career that you're going to get into? And therefore, in this circumstance, it is just not the mere academic. You now need to add emotional intelligence in terms of your career development, in terms of that scenario. This is one of the things that we were able to do at the career prisoners, particularly, whereby when they failed in the outer school, we were able to take them, carry them to career, and then they get a sense of purpose, what you really want to do, what is your skill, what you like, and then train them. And therefore, we had prisoners who went through what we call university or career, and they never went back as prisoners, they never came back as prisoners. And therefore, this is one of the things that I find that when you look at the teachers, that they have failed miserably in terms of those areas and how you deal with it. It's just academic, you learn it, you cram it, without balancing it in terms of things like emotional intelligence. The last area I want to raise now is youth. Youth justice is the last one that I wish to, I see like they told me time.
No, Carl, what they mean to say is we need your phone number and your time. Because what you're saying, Carl, I'm being very, very serious. I have committed the last 5 years and more to career guidance at my alma mater, Presentation College, Convent Girls, CIC Boys in Port of Spain. But I tell kids all the time.
Let me just take 1 second and then run away. The last point I have on my calendar is that you talk about participation. And therefore, what I'm seeing is that you are tied into your own constituency to win San Fernando West, which will be a whole thing. But what I saw is that you have a whole group of people in Hibernian, brilliant people, and yet you have not been able to pull them. I'm suggesting, let me put it that way, I'm suggesting that you use these people to assist you with the public relations, because they, if you look at it, there is, from a national security perspective, there's what you call ethnic journalism. And therefore, in this circumstance, anything that happens, you would find the other side just dealing with it. They have people to deal with it. Therefore, you are dealing with it, you're alone dealing with it, and you have a whole group of people in Hibernian willing to help you. So I'm saying that you need to involve them while you do your San Fernando West.
Thank you very much. And what I was trying to agitate, not only to you, but to everyone else, is that it really isn't just us and you conversation. It's just us. It's a we. I'm one person. I have this microphone for the time being. I'll be the representative for a time. Junior was representative before. Mom was in the back was representative before that. Barry Sinanan was representative before that. Errol Mahabir, Sadiq Baksh, whomever it might be. Carolyn C. Prasad Bechan. It requires our enterprise. No, I like to be fair, ladies and gentlemen, because you may step up and be the representative, but whether you represented is a different question. So what we have to do is to get involved in our societies. It involves having to speak to children, each of us, and making sure that education isn't only about whether you will be employed or not. I tell people all the time, education is about whether you want to be employed or be the employer. There's nothing wrong with being an entrepreneur. There's nothing wrong with making doubles and being a millionaire or a multi-millionaire, as some of our doubles men are. There is nothing wrong with being an employment subject, meaning an employee. The point is you've got to decide where you want to go. Mrs. Boyce?
All right, before Ms. Boyce, before you start, we have a very tight schedule going forward. I will say we have no more than about 20 minutes. So well, your questions need to be short.
Sorry, if I could interrupt. Your boy here has to speak on a political platform in 15 minutes' time.
Very well.
So
Faris,
we're slightly tight.
Good evening, everybody. And Faris, you know, I'm very concerned at the speed at which you drive.
I drive very slowly, yes, always within the law.
Yes. I am not going to pose the question I posed to you several months ago with respect to the burning issue of parking in San Fernando.
Very much so.
I'm speaking as a proprietor of a business, and I'm severely affected by clients not being able to get parking.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I'm just speaking this evening as a member of Community Peacemakers. We are established at this Catholic Church in San Fernando, and we offer a free mediation service. And we are begging you to please access our services. It's a free voluntary mediation services, Mr. Mattis. So even though the authorities are not providing the service, we do offer a free one, and we are begging you to send your people to us. And excellent. On a national level, the judiciary has promised that sooner than later, mediation is going to become compulsory in Trinidad and Tobago.
Absolutely, which is why the pilot project has been what it has.
Right. But in the meantime, just call us at the Catholic Church in San Fernando, and mediation is the way to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Boyce.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I'd just like to ask...
could you just excuse me, name and the organization that you represent, please, first?
Well, name Beverly Paris, organization myself. Freelancing.
You're an NGO, right?
Yeah. The Vision 2020 document from the last administration I found was a very good document. I would like to know what plans y'all would have when y'all are returning to power, if that document will be dusted off and start to be implemented.
I can answer that immediately. That document not will be dusted off. It was dusted off. It has been recasted, and it has been reoriented into a Vision 2030 document. And the reason why we say 2030 is not just to create some degree of change, but it's also to say that the deliverable at 2020 is no longer possible because we had a hiatus. And some things have been performed and some things have been set back. So we've had to reanalyze where we're going and reset those priorities. So the answer is yes, it's in fact an improved document. Our contract with the people, which is our manifesto, will be published very shortly, and it will have a lot of detail inside of it. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Raquel Burke, St. Vincent de Paul, Home for the Aged.
Good evening.
Kampong, let me just say that, because we also run a night shelter and a hostel there. My issue is with the homeless population. I've been working in St. Vincent de Paul 21 years, so I've seen government come and government go. And everybody have a meeting and they say they're going to do this and they're going to do that. And nothing has really been happening. I saw a gentleman this morning naked walking around on Touch Street. So I want to know that St. Vincent de Paul has always been here. Everybody will send somebody to St. Vincent de Paul because we always houses people that don't have anywhere to live. But what are the help there for us as an organization? Where do you see yourself as our next representative giving us to continue our work.
Sure. You will recall that in the last budget, you got $0 and 0 cents. There was a certain senator that spotted that and who went to town on the removal of money from St. Vincent de Paul and Vision on a Mission. And as a result of cussing, you got your money, whatever little it was this year. That is how close you are to my heart. St. Vincent de Paul, I grew up nearby, just a stone's throw away from it. I've watched you at work for my whole life. When I came to some of your homes during the Mother's Day celebration and I saw what I've seen many years ago and throughout the years, because I used to spend every weekend of my life involved as a young man working at the hospitals and different other areas, it hasn't changed. And how one funds entities like this is not a problem that Trinidad and Tobago alone has. Many entities around the world have it. The question is going to be, can we marry the Ministry of the People's work or Ministry of Social Development's work with some of what you do? They get $9 billion a year. To do what? Compare that versus, does it make sense to marry the two entities in terms of performance, to have some subsidies? Do we encourage businesses to get tax write-offs? As I tell you before, it exists. Charitable donation tax write-off is 150% on the books. If I give $100, I get to write off $150. Correct? Deeds of gift, deeds of other things. But what is the incentive? What is the awareness? Where is the compassion? I think it's fair to say that Trinidad is a harder, less caring, more eat-of-foodish society than it has ever been before. This has been the legacy of your government working for you. So that's why I said a little while earlier that one of our first priorities is to get serious about the task in front of us. Let me make it clear as to what my belief is. Whoever wins San Fernando West wins the next election. And I would like to believe I have a good shot. I'm not in the habit of doing anything halfway. I'm going to give it 150% all the way. Anybody who's walked the constituencies with me will know that. Those of you who are out of breath and sweating at the end of it, right? But we have a ball. We're having so much fun. Some of you look 10 pounds lighter. It all looks good. So the point is, San Fernando West is a key constituency. I didn't come here by mistake. St. Vincent de Paul is about to receive a very strong advocate for San Fernando, and an advocate not only against the government. It's easy to complain against this government. You have to complain in your own government. You have to make sure you fight for the fair share of resources here. Today when I sat down with Dr. Rowley at the JCC and I told him about some of my perspective of San Fernando, I said, Doc, I hope you're ready for me being a nag in the party, because I'm going to make noise. San Fernando has to have its fair share, and I give you that commitment that I will fight for it.
Hi. Who's the next one? Let's have the next question now, please, and then we could take it.
Hi, good day. My name is Joshua Badram, and I'm from Achieve TT. My question comes back to the arguments about, well, the conversation about jobs and youths. A lot of times we tend to think that youth need guidance on the job that they want to get. But also, a lot of youths would do their research and know the jobs, but then the job that they want to get and the career that they want to pursue isn't really feasible in Trinidad. Now, you raised the point about diversity, and we have so much agricultural lands and so much different things. I have many friends who study environmental sciences, but they have to work as an office clerk or something like that, because business, law, medicine, those fields usually make the money, and we have so much fields that doesn't. So I think there's a way to merge both, since we need the workforce in the agricultural field. Like we say, what are your plans and the PNM's plans in terms of getting to the best use of those youths in terms of who study environmental sciences and all of this, to get them to be used to actually help diversify the economy?
Excellent point, Joshua. and you are clearly very comfortable on a microphone. So part of the situation surely involves you, part of the solution. And let me tell you this. Mr. Mattis raised something which was very, very important. We have a very large contractor-based public service. His daughter may be a doctor, but she's on contract. What does that mean? What is your ability to finance yourself and stand on your own 2 feet from a bank's perspective? How much security of tenure do you have? Now that's one point that we're committed to dealing with, that I wanted to deal with Mr. Mattis, but it ties into what you're saying. When we start to create the structures to talk about exactly what you're doing, look at what can happen. You remember the UNC laughed the PNM out of town for our mega farms? You may not remember. They laughed. Mega farm was a mega farm where only Cubans come in here and what all they could do. All of a sudden, mega farms being built in Guyana, and all of a sudden they're looking at mega farms today, and they're looking at Israelis coming in to teach them how to do it, because they realize that if you create a center for agriculture, the profit off of agriculture is exponential, because your crop now has value. And if you can insulate your crop from pestilence, insulate it from flooding, and provide the ability to market your products, take it from off the field into the refrigerator, then you are creating an industry which becomes viable. And there's no reason why your friends who are in environmental sciences can't be their own bosses. Look at a fella named Avinash Singh. You heard of him? Young, bright, 25-year-old farmer. Brilliant young man who I am so proud of, I can't even begin to tell you. He's a phenomenal speaker in the Senate. He's passionate about agriculture. But Avinash makes farming sexy. Why? Because he believes in what he is doing. He has demonstrated how you can earn good money off of farming. He's demonstrated the power of the land with a tractor and proper irrigation. He at 25 years old was able to walk Chaguanas West against the might of Jack Warner with a truck full of sweet potatoes behind him and feed the whole constituency from his own hands. And that wasn't just giveaway. The fact is, he was producing it. But he's 25 years old. He went to UE, he's qualified, he has a degree, but he now converted that into the business side of it. And part of what is close to my heart is in creating the incubation for businesses. I tell people all the time, I have an LLB, a Bachelor of Laws. I have an LLM, a Master's of Laws. I have an LEC, the Legal Education Certificate. I trade all of those, and I cherish most my BSc. And it doesn't mean a Bachelor of Sciences. It means my behind the store counter degree. The practical common sense that you get from business. The buying and selling. The butting your head against the wall. Understanding what can go right or wrong. It is business that drives our economies. And we need to create an entrepreneurial society. We don't need more employees. We need more employers. And there's no reason why each and every young person cannot be an employer. It just requires entrepreneurship. It requires power washing, car cleaning. Look at what detailing cars does. You know, people frown upon manual labor, you know. But manual labor done right is more money than you'll get working as a clerk for the government. Domestic help done right is more money than you will earn tax-free for some people than you will get putting on a suit and tie. The question is, how do you create the incentives to get people into thinking this way? And San Fernando has so many examples of how to do it. We need to become entrepreneurial. The government's basis, my basis would be to create the environment for it. It would be to encourage businesses and students to accept each other in a gap year. You finish A-levels, You want to take a year off from school before you go into what you're pursuing? Put it whilst at work. Work in the social services sector, work in the public sector, or work in the private sector, but be employed so you can appreciate the lifestyle and work that you're about to get into and retool your way through. Some of the difficulty with having one of the best education experiences in Trinidad is that it's all for free. So there's no value for it. And people hop from degree to degree to degree because they don't have to pay for it. When I was at the University of the West Indies, Trinidad and Tobago had to remove the government cess. It's the economic contribution that the governments gave to Cave Hill Campus, University of the West Indies. So my mom had to fork out some money until it is that the government came back in. But a lot of our population have forgotten from the year 2002 onward how much the PNM did to make sure that education was for free. And they think it's now just for so. Well, it didn't come just for so, just so. We had to create the industries in oil and gas as we did to pay for the ability to get there. And perhaps we're a party that didn't boast enough, but also a party that didn't explain enough. And what we intend to do is to share those experiences now and to take it seriously. I would love for somebody to say, I want to be a politician. I still find it very hard to describe myself not as a lawyer, but as a politician. Because lawyers are second to last in the corruption index perception, and they are outranked only by last being the politicians. I fit both categories. It's not something I'm very proud of, because I'm not a crook, I'm not corrupt, and I take my work seriously. But it's time to do like Singapore did, where you know the president of Singapore is paid per year $2 million a year. The people that I met on the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association conferences who were ministers of Singapore were double PhD head of corporations. They were earning minimum $100,000 a month to run a ministry. Why? They got the best and the brightest people to step forward and serve their country because they paid for it. Think of how much cheaper it would be to pay somebody well to make sure that they were clean and corrupt free by having good legislation that could function well, not only just be good in the law, but function well, as opposed to seeing billions of dollars lost in corruption. I would rather pay my Prime Minister handsomely well and demand performance out of him or her because they have the ability to do it. I don't want it to be said that politicians are drawn from the pool of either being crooks or mooks. It can't be that.
All right, Faris, it's now 25 to 8. We're going to do two things. One, we need to bring this session somewhat to a close because we still want to have a few minutes of networking so that the new member or the person who is going to be the new member for San Fernando West will have a chance to meet and greet with some of the people who are here. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to take one more question. I'm going to take one more question.
Louis, the last time I arrived at a political meeting late, Dr. Rowley swore he would crucify me because it interrupts the whole media.
You might be up on the cross soon. But we'll cut it off here. Yeah. And what I will ask is that anybody who have any question, they could just document it, put an email address on it, and we will get back to you.
And also, you are welcome to come and engage us in our offices any day, anytime. Debbie's at the office from 9 till whenever. She has no cutoff time, God bless her. And you're also really very welcome to come on any of the walks that we come along. Young ladies, the three of you sitting here, you are very welcome to pack away your high heels and come and have a run with us in the afternoons. We'd be very happy to see you there. Young men who are out here this afternoon, young man who is looking a little bit cold but still awake over there, we'd be very happy to see you come with us. So you're welcome to come and participate. There's no question that we wouldn't be pleased to answer, or more particularly any idea that we would be loath to receive. It is the ideas that make the difference. So ladies and gentlemen, may I express my profound gratitude for your turnout. I am certainly very pleased to be amongst you all, and I look forward to serving you as the representative for San Fernando West, and God willing that our party would be blessed to serve Trinidad and Tobago truly without fear or favor, malice or ill will for all our citizens. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
On behalf of the campaign team, I just want to thank you all for coming out and for really extending our candidate somewhat with the questions, etc., that you have asked. And we look forward to receiving the other questions that you are going to write out for us. They will get answered. Again, thank you very much, and there are some refreshments waiting for us.